Each table will have a discussion leader, and on your badges you have the number of your table. Also, please go and pick up your private meeting sign-ups. Those are from 4 to 7 this afternoon. And I look forward to the discussion at lunchtime and to the reports from you all as well. Thank you very much.
Pennsylvania Turnpike, which is a terrific bill for the government. I don't know if you know the
It's something that tells you quickly. Quick, yeah, quick.
There was an incentive phase prior to vote. So the first investor already went bankrupt. Because everyone who bought it,
resource allocation and planning is a real problem. And it affects cost, it affects labor productivity. Some parts of it.
I'll be glad you do that.
From which, very well. Not my job.
From which angle? From contractual, financial, political risk? Yes. The biggest issue that we have as a private company when we contract in foreign countries is dispute resolution.
We did Missouri for the 800 million bridge rehab, and we were on the last page of the last document. It was a closed deal. We didn't happen that day. But then, 8 hours after the stimulus, we did.
You solved that problem.
But he has realized later, you see, because all these problems that Mexico has at the moment come from this.
We've already saved 400 million. The next group was Bechtel and Mitsubishi, and they were $1 billion over them.
The negotiation not for reducing, it's only for limited activities.
Where the government signed a 20-year spot type contract, and whatever the cost was, it really isn't all that. But I mean, it might have cost 50 million to build.
Business plans, they know what the appetite and what the analytical criteria, the risk metrics are of your targeted investor. So, you know, it's not that hard in the sense you've got to put it together. I mean, we've done a lot of the work. It's just like, nope.
I understand. But this is one of the major issues in the way that it debates is that agencies, unfortunately, you screen everything. Because in other places, they take it without a lot of screening, because all that they do is then take stuff out of budget, and then they use the budget for all purposes.
How do you keep guarantees for improving the management of the project owner?
Well, first, we concluded that there is no way we can have a unique solution to speed up infrastructure construction, because the world is diverse, is very heterogeneous, and we need to consider different situations, different scenarios, different cases of the countries. We can, simplifying, we can divide the world into, you know, stronger, more developing countries where institutions are strong, stable, etc. And we have others that are developing and where you cannot find that kind of strong, stable institutions. We were talking about the second, because the first, it's all in financial crisis, and we cannot do anything about that right now. In the second case, the weak and developing institutions, one of the things that characterize that scenario is the short-term political agendas that doesn't allow to build infrastructure, because especially strategic infrastructure needs long-term, need plans, and need several periods of political government. So if you don't have that long-term agenda, that means that you need a consensus, a social consensus and political consensus on a certain agenda of infrastructure, a certain number of projects. You cannot do that in the long term. So you have to emphasize with society to build that consensus. The selling point should be the long-term benefits of the infrastructure projects and not so much the short-term project. It's not just building something, but all the impact that something will have on society, on communities, on integration, on inclusion, etc. Second, going to the poorer countries, do not start with big, complex projects. There are lots of projects that are more obvious and they are like low-hanging fruit, and you should start with that to generate trust and generate part of the community that is getting the benefits quick. And then, to conclude, you have to introduce, in the long term, you have to introduce first reforms, market reforms, to allow the conditions for building infrastructure properly at a reasonable pace, which means you have to have stable institutions with good people, with sophisticated and knowledgeable people. You have to build trust. That means
I would say that unless you have a conclusion or you have been discussing, I would say that we should try to
legal and trust in the laws in the long term for the people inside and for the people outside. That allows you to build public-private partnerships that work in the long term, and then you can go quick on building projects. Otherwise, you cannot do it. That's it.
Thank you very much, Antonio Juan. That was great. Table number 2, but you guys only get to say one thing. Antonio got 3.
My name is Arthur Miles. I'm with Caltrop Corporation, and we've taken a much narrower scope. We've arrived at a consensus that we need to streamline, expedite the procurement process in these projects. And in order to do that, we need to be able to let the private sector maximize its strength and not be hindered by the rules of the public sector. That is what we promptly arrived at.
That's very interesting, especially from the multilateral point of view. Don't be inhibited by the public sector's rules.
That's correct.
Hi, I'm Steve Clark. I'm the rail business leader for the Americas region for ARAP. We're planners, designers, and engineers. And we would suggest that out of this group, there are going to be many, many good ideas. And from that, you will be able to create a set of benchmarking criteria that could be used for modeling the stakeholder interests, the stakeholder interests for developing infrastructure projects, and in particular, capturing the best practices for public and private market involvement. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Antonio Vives. I'm a consulting professor at Stanford University and was formerly a manager at the Inter-American Development Bank. We did not have any leader. Did not show up. That's the problem. Anyway, given that we're going to tweet, I'll tell you in 140 characters or less. The problem is that the private sector, as I've seen it on both sides, is that the private sector has a heck of a hard time communicating with the public sector. They speak completely different languages. One wants one thing, has a set of values, has a set of goals, has a set of incentives. The other one responds to another set of values, another set of incentives, neither of which are going to want to conciliate with each other. If we were able to put them together and try at least get a little closer in speaking the same language, we will get a heck of a lot more infrastructure projects.
Well, at table 6, we had a consensus that since these projects are really international in nature, that local rules giving favoritism to local industries are an impediment to moving these sorts of projects forward. And so we think that those kinds of obstacles should not be allowed. That will be one of the factors that we think will be able to accelerate these processes and get projects moving a little faster.
And I think we came up with maybe 2 or 3 things that we thought we really need to do to speed things up and increase the quality, which were, one, the public sector in many countries is very, from a political standpoint, is short-term, very narrow view in terms of the range of planning. So we need some reform in order to have the public sector look more long-term around infrastructure projects. And then in order to get projects through, and I think this was brought up in some of the other discussions throughout the day, is sovereign guarantees would help the PPPs actually be able to feel more of a guarantee to invest in infrastructure globally. And then, since I'm from Autodesk, my gratuitous technology is going to be an enabler to speed up the placement of design and construction of infrastructure and the quality as well.
Great, thanks a lot for your one suggestion.
Yeah, we tried to approach the question by splitting it in 2 pieces, basically, and asked ourselves, how do we increase the quality? And we came up with choose the right people and choose the right PPP model. And how to increase the velocity? Well, once you have a right framework and the political support, go back to centralized databases and get the people together. And actually, Gustavo, one of our colleagues here, who just left for a moment, he basically quoted us back to a quote from Professor Beavis and saying, it's a pity that half of the world has food to sell, whereas the other half of the world is starving and they don't talk to each other.
Thank you very much. Mark.
Table 9, board consensus, I think. I think we'll start with the question first. Could you put your hands up if you're from in the broadest sense, the public sector? Okay. Thank you very much. And obviously, put your hands down and put your hands up if you're from the private sector. I think I've probably just demonstrated what I want to say, which is more engagement between the public and the private sector, and better education between the private and the public sector as to their motivations and both people's desires and needs. And I think that'll create a greater and more vibrant global infrastructure market.
That's great. Thank you very much, and thanks for the graphic illustration.
My name is Daniel Martin from Caja Madrid. Table number 10 got to a consensus that even if we are aware that the global infrastructure market is very diversified, there are some things which should be standardized to speed up infrastructure investments. And I think, for example, procurement processes within one country shouldn't be ruled with different legal systems. For example, the United States have different legal systems. Even in the Eurozone, we have different legal systems. So it would be very helpful to have a standardization in that procurement process. This will ease also training of human capital in those countries which are not familiarized with infrastructure investments, so they can copy or at least learn from other countries. And we are of the opinion, or the table is of the opinion, that there's sufficient money out there actually to invest, but it's true that due to this different legal systems, there's a clear entry, barrier of entry to invest in foreign countries.
Joaquin de Lara, table 11. We have a very rich discussion, so we actually never reach an agreement. So, yeah. So what I'm going to say now is not just an agreement, but it's a bunch of ideas that more or less make sense. So, well, what we did agree is that it's not a question of speed. It's a question of the problem. It's the shortage of financing in many infrastructure projects. So how do you really improve that or reduce that problem? Well, also most of the people in the table, they agreed that the money is there. The problem is to convince the owners of the money to put the money in certain projects. So again, we are back into what we have discussed this morning here in several tables, how to seduce or convince the financiers, and then one of the answers is to offer more guarantees. How do you offer more guarantees? Well, this is a case-by-case basis. Certain cases mean that guarantees, the problem with the guarantees is the project owner. Sometimes they don't have, simply they don't have the management capacity. How do you improve that? That will be the case with many cases, with many projects. Another case is just political stability. How do you improve that? That's a different case. So going that way, at the end of the ladder, what you would need is to offer guarantees to transfer the risks to somebody else that is not the financial agent. And again, there is not a general response, but a case by case, and the problem is the shortage on how to attract this money and provide them guarantees that they will get the right return. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Table number 12, Michael Murad, DBI Services Incorporated. We also had a healthy discussion. What we came to is a focus that the base or the common base needed to move projects forward is a strong initiative by the public sector in support of the specific project and the contracting model to go along with that project, but not do it only through policies, but actually educating everyone through the ranks to the benefits, so the perception of conflict of interest is minimized and efforts are aligned to share best practices so projects can move forward. Thank you.
I'm Brent Jones from Esri. We identified the problem, one of the major problems is deficiencies in the legal framework, and they vary from country to country. Corruption and getting establishment of the rule of law is always a problem. But what do you do about that? The action that we came up with is establishing possibly a bank-run coalition that establishes benchmarks and standards that can be used globally, kind of a regulatory standard clearinghouse that countries would need to conform to in order to participate with those lending banks. And I think that'd be a good opportunity for CGLA to run that.
Sure. Thank you very much for the plug. Table 14, please. Thanks, Brent.
Table 14. That sounds like bingo caller, doesn't it?
When you say it.
It does. Don't all get too excited. Hugh Thomas, Foster & Partners. We went for pithy. Identify demand fully. Do a full pre-feasibility study and also identify a way of monetizing secondary economic benefits, and design from the outset a financing structure that prolongs the investment horizon and prolongs your iPad's screen time. That wasn't pithy enough. It comes down to, don't mess around. If you want to do the project, do everything that it takes to get the project done.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Appreciate that. Wanted to say that we had a very lively discussion at our table. We have a good cross-reference and cross-section of various people in the industries. We came up with some good ideas that would be including get stakeholders to understand the benefits early on. And that would be communities that might be affected by the project, and also to get the participants in the project who might be part of the various engineering teams to be more integrated in terms of the project delivery, starting earlier, starting with, in the early design process, as opposed to those who may come in at the end of the project or towards the middle of the project, try to get more people involved in earlier. We had the ability to have more transparency on the project, be it both sides of the public and private sector, to provide more transparency for investors, so investors can see the benefits of the project. Also, we had reduced bureaucracy, which I think everybody can agree with, and that means less studies, less impact studies and various things. And someone gave a great example, I won't say who, but at the table in China, when they built the dam, they said, this is where the water's going to be, this is the date when it's going to be there, we suggest you move. So that's kind of a quick way to get things done, but maybe it's a little bit unrealistic. But still, just to get things moving along a little bit quicker.
Who are you with?
I'm with a technology company that provides technology tools to engineering firms.
Great.
So I won't take credit for it, and I won't say who said it, but it's certainly a quick way to get things done. So to wrap up, we're just really looking for better quality projects developed before the project goes to RFP. So it's kind of a combination of private and public sector improvements.
Table 16, Richard Ordnance, Patent Box. After a sidebar discussion of best place to put the bread on the plate while going through the line, we quickly moved that aside. And we came to the wisdom of Table 2, which is shared by Table 15, that the most important need was a way to make the procurement process more efficient, and within that, to make sure that projects are fully vetted, particularly on the governmental side, before they come to market. However, we had a debate about the advantage and need for technology, so we augmented that last statement by saying, and bringing the best available technology to the projects. Thank you.
I'm John Orson with Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. We're Table 17, a prime number that follows Table 13 and precedes Table 19. We want to take action to invest in and increase the capacity of the public sector to choose and support infrastructure projects. All governments have sovereign powers that should be directed to establish regulatory and legal frameworks to support and nourish the project. Governmental support will basically lower the risk of the project and accelerate the velocity of the project to completion.
Mustafa Jani with International Group Technologies, Airport Consulting Firm, and Intros Global Investments. My table, they told me I'm the last guy at the table, so I should speak. So. And I realized we all think alike. We are planners, engineers, construction management people, and managers of...
You guys weren't all supposed to be at the same table.
Yeah, I know. So the concession was commitment from the government, consistency in laws, support logistics, stability, so that when you are building the project, you know where you are going, rather than rules being changed along the way. And I decided to add, without that approval, improvement in capacity development, especially in the local community. Okay. That can be a delay factor. Program management services, as we all know, in some parts of the world, just to get stuff done requires a lot of organization. So program management, construction management services is key. The last one is resource organization. Resources come from different parts, especially for large infrastructure projects. Organizing that is key. The material, the logistics are all key.
We agree, the public sector has a very difficult time understanding the private sector, and the private sector has an extraordinarily difficult time understanding the public sector. And bridging that difference is one of the key elements. And a couple elements to that is, one is aligning the interest of all stakeholders. And to do that, that informs risk allocation models to better understand, so the dialogue is a little easier between the public sector and the private sector.
My name is Li Xinzhou. Our tables have very warm discussions. The most important action, we think, from the public financing point, is to change idea, change behavior from traditional market-based investment theory to change to the concept of the portfolio investment. Just from change from micro customer behavior to the macro customer behavior. Thanks.
Table 22, and almost exactly what Table 20 was saying. This gulf, this magnificent gulf between the private sector and the public sector. And the remark that leadership didn't show up is kind of the theme that we were hitting on, that there needs to be more government involvement, that there needs to be a repository of knowledge that standardizes the vernacular for public-private partnerships, and that the inertia that is hanging over governments today would be broken by the idea that there'd be certainty and understanding of how these would work, and the entire private sector could benefit from it because they'd be coming at these governments from different angles, different interests, but all talking the same language.
Hi, Table 23. I'm Carol Rigg with Bentley Systems.
And we had a very lively discussion, but just to focus on that since 2008, since the financial crisis, that the funding models have really changed quite a bit, and so that the financial institutions are no longer willing to take those great risks. So instead of a project just having perhaps just a few sole sources of funding, we're looking at now perhaps a scenario where there's different financial modeling. Of course, we could have our P3s, our public-private partnerships, but also perhaps other financial hybrids that have yet to be developed. And how do all these different financial institutions talk to each other about funding infrastructure projects? So our bottom line is no money, no project. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Majid Chandrasekhar with Halcro.
Yeah, you're last, so you get to like tell us everything.
That's right. I'm going to summarize everything that was said, and I don't really know how we can follow what was said here, but just looking at my notes here, said, really summarizing it, it is just do it. You know, why can't we follow the success of countries like China or India where they just get it done? I think one of the issues that we touched upon is public sector capacity, and that was spoken about here. You know, you speak private, I speak public, or vice versa. So it comes down to communication and education, really. There is an institutional building that needs to be done. For example, just in the US, if you've had 60 years of public procurement with trust fund type models, et cetera, how do you get people at DOTs, et cetera, to understand that P3s are a different model that can successfully deliver projects? Personally, from talking to the private side, the money is not the issue, is what I've been hearing. There's been a lot of equity raised, but the public sector is not delivering projects that the equity can flow into. So that's really the last comment. Create a framework that will allow the investment to actually flow in rapidly, because the financial community is quite good at raising money.